You've got $11,400 sitting in a savings account and an investment account combined, and honestly, some nights that number feels like a small miracle. You remember when it was zero. You remember the first year of skipping things, saying no to things, watching every dollar like a hawk just to get here. And now you're supposed to believe that this same account is eventually going to hit $100,000, six figures. It doesn't feel like a milestone that's coming, it feels like a rumor, something that happens to other people, people with better jobs or richer parents or some secret you weren't given. You do the math in your head and it feels like you'd have to live like a monk for another 20 years just to get there, and that math makes you want to just stop trying altogether. Here's the thing that's going to blow your mind. That feeling you have right now, that this next stretch is somehow harder or slower or more impossible than the first 10 grand you scraped together, that feeling is almost the exact opposite of what's mathematically true. The gap you just closed, 0 to 10,000, that was, without question, the hardest money you will ever save in your entire life. And the gap in front of you, 10,000 to 100,000, is going to close faster than you think, for reasons that have almost nothing to do with how hard you work, and almost everything to do with a mechanism most people never sit down and actually look at. My name's Nick, and I spend way too much time looking at exactly why some people's money seems to multiply on its own, while other people work just as hard and stay stuck in the same place for years. Quick disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice. This is just what happens when you get a little obsessed with the math behind why people quit right before things get easier. Let's talk about why that first 10,000 nearly broke you, because understanding that is the key to understanding everything that comes after it. When you have $0 saved, every single cent of progress comes from exactly one place, your own behavior. Nothing is helping you. There's no investment growth to speak of, no meaningful interest, no tailwind of any kind. It is 100% you, spending less than you earn, month after month, with absolutely nothing pushing from behind. That is grinding, unassisted labor, and it is genuinely the hardest phase of the entire wealth-building process. This is also exactly why most people never get past it. Not because they're bad with money, but because they're doing a task that offers almost no feedback. You put in $100 this month, then another $100 next month, and the account barely seems to move. Your brain, which is wired to look for evidence that effort is working, gets almost nothing to hold on to. Psychologists call the belief that you're capable of succeeding at something self-efficacy, and when you have zero savings, your brain genuinely cannot picture what $100,000 would even look like, so it doesn't try very hard to get there. It just white-knuckles through the month and hopes. But something happens once you cross that first $10,000 line that changes the entire physics of the situation, and almost nobody explains it clearly. You've just entered what I'd call the quiet middle. It's the least talked about phase of building wealth because it isn't dramatic enough for a headline and it isn't hard enough anymore to be miserable, but it isn't exciting enough yet to feel like anything is happening either. It's the long, flat-feeling stretch where your investments have started contributing, just barely, but not enough yet for you to notice day to day. This is exactly the phase where most people quietly give up. Not because it's the hardest phase, it's actually easier than what you already survived, but because it's the most boring one, and boredom is a far more effective wealth killer than difficulty ever was. Let's actually run the numbers, because the acceleration here is the part that should genuinely change how you feel about where you're standing right now. Let's say you're contributing $500 a month, and your money is earning a conservative 7% average annual return, the same kind of return the broad stock market has handed out for the better part of a century. Going from zero to your first 10,000, contributing entirely on your own with almost no help from returns, that took you somewhere around 19 to 20 months, nearly 2 full years of pure, unassisted effort. Now watch what happens next. Going from 10,000 to 25,000, that same $500 a month, plus your investments quietly compounding underneath it, takes about 24 months. Sounds similar, right? Except you just added $15,000 in the same rough time frame it took you to add your first 10. The math already flipped in your favor, and you probably didn't even notice. Keep going. $25,000 to $50,000, same $500 monthly contribution, same 7% return, takes around 26 months. You just added another $25,000, more than double what you added in the previous stretch in almost the same amount of time. And here's where it gets genuinely wild. $50,000 to $100,000, that same contribution, that same return takes about 27 months. You are now adding $50,000, 5 times what your entire first milestone was, in barely more time than it took you to save your first 10 grand from nothing. The contribution amount never changed. You never worked harder. You never made more money. The only thing that changed is how much of the lifting your money started doing instead of you. Here's the number that should genuinely reframe how you see your progress right now. At $10,000 invested, earning 7%, your money is generating about $700 a year on its own, without you touching it. That's basically nothing, barely a rounding error, and it's exactly why this stage still feels slow. But at $50,000, that same 7% is generating around $3,500 a year in growth alone, more than your entire annual contribution from the $500 a month plan. And at $100,000, you're looking at roughly $7,000 a year in growth without lifting a single finger, which is more money than most people manage to actively save in an entire year of budgeting and sacrifice. Somewhere in that quiet middle stretch, your money quietly stopped being a passenger and became the engine. Let's make this real with 2 people, because the abstract version never hits the same way the human version does. Meet Danielle and Priya. Same starting point, both hit $10,000 saved at the exact same age, both earning similar salaries, both saving $500 a month from that point forward. Danielle looks at her account 18 months into the quiet middle, sees it's grown by what feels like a disappointing amount, and decides this clearly isn't working fast enough. She stops contributing consistently. Some months she puts in $500, some months she puts in nothing because a vacation came up or her car needed brakes and the account wasn't really doing anything for her anyway. Priya, on the other hand, does something almost aggressively boring. She keeps the $500 a month on autopilot and does not touch it. She doesn't check the balance obsessively. She just lets the transfer happen and goes about her life. 10 years later, Danielle, who's been sporadically saving somewhere around $300 a month on average with all the stopping and starting, has around $55,000. Priya, who never changed a thing, has just over $95,000. That's a $40,000 gap between 2 people with the same starting point, the same income, and the same general life circumstances. The difference wasn't intelligence, it wasn't a better job, it was that Priya got through the quiet middle without quitting, and Danielle didn't. This is the entire game at this stage of wealth building. It's not a sprint, and it's not even really a grind anymore. Not the way the first 10,000 was. It's an endurance test against boredom, and boredom is sneaky because it doesn't feel like failure while it's happening. It just feels like nothing is happening, which tempts you to go looking for a change that isn't actually necessary. And I want to be fair here, because it would be easy to sit here and imply that anyone still in this stretch just isn't trying hard enough, and that's not accurate or kind. The quiet middle is genuinely under-discussed. Financial content loves to talk about the misery of starting from zero, and it loves to talk about the thrill of crossing $1 million, but almost nobody sits you down and tells you that the stretch in between is going to feel psychologically flat for a while. And that flat feeling is not a signal that something's wrong. It's actually a signal that the system is working exactly as designed. You're not failing. You're standing in the single most statistically predictable part of the entire wealth-building curve. The part where compounding is doing more and more of the work every single month, even though it doesn't feel dramatic yet. So what do you actually do differently in this exact phase, given everything we just walked through? The first thing, and it sounds almost insultingly simple, is to automate the contribution so it never touches a decision-making part of your brain again. The reason Danielle faltered wasn't a math problem, it was a willpower problem. And willpower is a genuinely terrible tool to rely on for something that needs to run consistently for years.
Set the transfer and then functionally forget it exists, the same way you forget a subscription you're not supposed to remember. Second, resist the urge to check your account balance as some kind of daily emotional barometer. In the quiet middle specifically, frequent checking is almost purely demoralizing because the growth genuinely is small and slow at this stage, and watching something grow slowly day by day feels worse than knowing intellectually that it's growing steadily year by year. Check quarterly, maybe twice a year if you can stand it. You'll see far more encouraging jumps that way, and you'll avoid the trap of mistaking a flat week for a flat trajectory.
Third, and this is the one that actually accelerates the timeline meaningfully, anytime your income goes up, whether it's a raise, a bonus, a side gig, or a tax refund, send at least half of that increase straight into the same account before your lifestyle has a chance to notice it exists. This is the single biggest lever in the entire quiet middle phase because it doesn't require you to sacrifice anything you're currently enjoying. It only requires you to intercept money you never had in the first place. And fourth, understand exactly where you are on this curve, so boredom doesn't masquerade as evidence that you should quit. If you're somewhere between $10,000 and $50,000 right now, you are in the flattest, most forgettable part of the entire journey, and it is also, mathematically, the part immediately before the acceleration gets undeniable. The version of you who gives up here is trading away the exact years where the payoff was about to become obvious. Here's what I actually want you to take from all of this. The first $10,000 nearly broke you because you were doing all the work completely alone with zero help and almost no evidence that it was working. That phase is genuinely over. You survived the hardest part already, even if it doesn't feel like a victory yet. What's in front of you now isn't another version of that same fight. It's a quieter, slower-feeling stretch where your money has started fighting alongside you, gaining strength every single month, even during the months where absolutely nothing seems to be happening on the surface. The people who make it to $100,000 are almost never the people who worked the hardest during this exact stretch. They're the people who simply didn't stop showing up while it felt boring. So if your account feels stuck right now, it probably isn't. You're standing in the quiet middle, and the quiet middle is exactly where the math finally starts working for you instead of against you. Keep the transfer running, stop checking so often, and give it the time it's already quietly earning back for you.